When you watch that Pardon the Interruption, you love Pardon the Interruption. You don't love it because there's the positive guy telling the thing. You love it because there's the guy telling the fucking angry
Kornheiser's mad at the world.
Yeah, and so that gets ratings, and that gets people involved. And so
the thing that makes that situation unique was Joe hasn't said anything bad about me. And I think that's going back to negativity. I'm fascinated as to why it bothers me as a person. And they go, the haters will say, well, because the fucking truth hurts and you stole that shit. But no, I didn't steal that from Bert. We all know it. The people in the know it. Bert knows it. Bert said it here where you are. And when he went on Joe's podcast, he said it's a story I didn't want told. And he did it, on his Showtime special. And Joe interrupted and goes, that's stealing. And Bert never finished the sentence to go, that's not stealing. But hold on. But what Joe said doesn't bother me. Because Joe just said it like, well, that didn't happen to him. That was fine. What bothered me is that the Red Band guy is literally a guy that like he's an ornament to the Joe thing. Like Joe is an industry, and this guy puts himself up as like the quote co-host of Joe's podcast. So when Bert said, why don't you have him here to defend himself? And when that guy, Brian, like he has a stage name and I blew him up on Twitter, which I'm not happy about. And I wanted to go on Joe's podcast because I wanted to apologize to the guy and say, I shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. But then they didn't have me on. It became like this pro wrestling thing. Like like you said, let it play out, let it stretch out, give it legs. And Joe and I texted on a Saturday, said, I'm with the kids. Let's podcast next week and get this all done. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Never heard from him Sunday. Never heard from him again.
Yeah, and I think the thing that for me that's more disappointing about the human condition is, again, I've known Bert his whole career too, and I started representing Bert in the beginning, and I love Bert Kreischer, just a wonderful guy, wonderful family. And he's on the show.
Right now someone's tweeting to Bert, Jay Mohr and Barry Katz are talking shit about you on Mohr Stories.
Yeah.
Not hearing that you just said.
And they might be, and he could listen for himself and take his own interpretation. But the hardest part for an artist or anybody in the business is to be able to just hold the line the way it's supposed to be held. Like when Andrew Bynum said recently, closeout games are, they're easy. Closeout games are easy. And they asked Kobe Bryant, what do you think about after the game? You lost the game. What do you think about what Andrew said about closeout games being easy? He didn't say, hey, Andrew Bynum is a fucking idiot. He should never have said that. He made our lives harder, and we lost the game tonight because of him. He just held the company line. And when Bert was with Joe Rogan, there was a way to handle that situation that he knows if there was a true serum in his veins, that it could have been handled a little differently. He could have said, look, I've known Jay my whole career. He's had me open for him. He's taken me on the road. He helped me become a better comic in New York. He helped me with everything having to do with my personal life and my professional life and many other things. And he's somebody who has really done a lot for me. And he would never intentionally do anything like this. I know what you're saying, and I know how it looks like this, but that's not really what it was, and I can finally put it to rest right now. But
that's
he did,
what makes me crazy.
But he didn't do it.
He could have put it to rest
But
I'll
tell you why Bert probably didn't do it.
What do you mean put it to rest? At any time, Bert could have said, Jay did not steal the story.
That's right, but he didn't do it. And
he did. Hold on, real quick. Oddly, the appearance before that appearance on Joe Rogan, he told the story. He goes, Jay does this story in his act. He did not steal it from me. He said that. So he already said it, and it's look how upset. Look how much it bothers me.
No, it bothers you because
I lost my best friend. He was at my wedding.
Yeah.
His children were on the floor with my wife. They thought she was Cinderella, and my wife took time out of the wedding to play with like his daughter. Like this was my best friend.
But there's still time in your life for him to be your best friend again. So you can always create better relationships.
I saw him at the airport. I hugged him and I kissed him. I told him I loved him. He said, I love you too. That was it. Never heard from him again.
Doesn't matter.
I know.
Time heals all wounds. Anyway, so the thing is that, so obviously everybody believes they're right. Nobody ever looks in the mirror and says, I'm wrong. It just doesn't happen. I mean, it's just people.
That's also what made me nuts is when I knew I was wrong, I was offered a platform to go to that place, to Joe's studio, and say, hey, when I said that shit about you on Twitter, I was wrong. And then that got pulled from me. So now I'm out in the ether with this. I want to make amends, and there's no one to do it to.
No, because all that anybody needs to know is that you know and that guy up there knows. And everybody else will know, too, when we talk about it. But the reason...
Bookman, the landlord?
Yes. And the butterfly, and the but the reason
butterflies are okay.
But the reason my perception is that Bert was in
every time Barry says Bert, it's fucking hilarious. Sorry.
So the reason why Mr. Kreischer, in my opinion, was in that situation and didn't say anything is I just feel like, and again, I'm admitting that I could be totally wrong. But when you're there and you're face to face in the fire with somebody, Joe Rogan is an incredibly powerful artist. I mean,
powerful.
Just a guy that's just
like a fucking soldier, Jay Mohr.
Literally like a guy who transcends just force of nature. Just a really unbelievably strong, powerful artist. And it's like when he's across from you, Bert is the kind of guy, and I think Bert would say Bert is like the wind. He's just like a guy who's so happy and so just goes with the flow and whatever. And when you're there with a guy who's that powerful, it's like sometimes you lose your way. And it doesn't mean that he didn't want to do something, or it doesn't mean that he didn't want to say what I just said. It just means that you're in the moment and you just kind of lose your way. And then when the thing ends, it's like Hilary Swank at the Academy Awards. You get off and you're walking off and you're like, oh my God, I forgot to thank Chad. It's like that happens in the moment when
they got divorced.
Yeah, so what? Whatever. So
that was a big thank you she missed.
But the point being is that sometimes you get lost in the moment, and you took that very personally and to a much higher level. And again, that's where you got in your own way with Bert, I think, is because you took this thing that happened really personally, and then you start texting and emailing, and it doesn't reflect tone, and people look at it and they think of it another way, and then all of a sudden you don't have a best friend anymore.
Right.
And you can only attribute it to your actions. You can say it's say it's his actions, but that action...
I could have let it die on the vine.
Yes.
If I just let it die on the vine. That's what's fascinating about podcasts and the internet. If you don't call attention to the problem, if you don't scratch it, no one knows it's there.
Yeah.
No one. This would be dead and buried long ago had I not went to Bert, had I not called out Red Band, and then they're talking about me with Doug Benson, and Joey Diaz says, I know Al Madrigal's got a problem with Jay, and I know Doug Benson's got a problem with him. By the way, Al Madrigal, who I threw my own showrunners on the sitcom under the bus, because I said, Al is doing the character the right way. You guys are wrong. The guy whose job I tried to save has a big problem with me. And yes, it bothers me.
And Al...
But why the fuck does this bother me so much, Katz?
It bothers you because you're in a situation where perception becomes reality.
It's ego. Why do I need to be fucking liked by everybody? The fact that Doug Stanhope has a problem with me because I made fun of his car 12 years ago makes me fucking nuts. And he called me a cunt on Joe's podcast. And then because I made fun of his car, to which I said, I might have said it here, I go, if that guy held on to me making fun of his car for 12 years, you know what, Doug Stanhope? You're a cunt. I made fun of your fucking car, and 15 years later you're on a podcast going, Jay Mohr is a cunt. Because of your fucking car? Really? Because the last time I hung out with you, Doug, me, you, and your mom were doing shots. I was drinking. That's how long ago it was. Me, you, and Mrs. Stanhope were doing fucking shots and vomiting in the parking lot of Fred Siegel at the Melrose Improv. Since then, I have never seen you. I've watched you a little bit on TV. I've seen you on Twitter. I've seen you on the Opie and Anthony message boards. And then the next time I see you with my eyes is on a Ustream channel at Joe Rogan's house, and you say, Jay Mohr's a cunt. Nothing happened from me drinking shots with Mrs. Stanhope to the moment you said I was a cunt that I'm aware of. And apparently, one night at the Comedy Store, he pulled in. I went, nice car. That's it. That was it. And he fucking held that shit like a hot coal and let his hand fucking melt under it.
And now look who's holding it now.
Me! That's why I had you here. It makes me fucking bananas. Why I guarantee you, Jim Carrey, who has probably 3, 5, 10 million Twitter followers, I bet when he goes to his mentions page and people say, you suck, you're not funny, or they say some shit about Lauren Holly or fucking, what's her name, Jenny McCarthy, or they fucking lob autism jokes at him about his stepson or whatever. I've never once seen him retweet it. I've never seen him respond to it. Something about that guy. Do you think Adam Sandler gives a fuck that people think is like retarded? No.
Well, I want to say this. He may give a fuck, and so might Jim Carrey, but they don't let the world know.
They don't scratch it.
Exactly.
And I'm walking around fucking scratching it.
Yeah, you got scratches all over your body.
It's unbelievable. That's why this podcast I wanted to ask you about. You're a guy that has never scratched it. You're also a guy I've seen have fucking Bell palsy attacks and your face froze because of stress.
True.
So maybe once in a while you should scratch it.
I'm scratching right now.
Because I remember once your face froze because of stress. You remember that?
That's true.
You look like Buddy Hackett. Well, to be in Nagasaki where the women chew the bucky and the men say, woo, wacky, woo, you gotta scratch it, otherwise your face will freeze up.
That's true. I want to share a story with you that sort of like it's fascinating because it has nothing to do with the business, but it has to do with positive and it has to do also with not so positive.
Okay, Stuart Smiley, have that.
And you can choose to take this out if you want to, but it relates to me and it affected me in a huge way.
Okay.
So my sons are 6 and 7. My oldest son Zion is very great with animals. Just always, you'll see him with a frog, a salamander, a cricket, a bird, anything, and it's just this amazing way with animals. And in my house, where I am, birds fly into the house a lot. So the other day, a bird flies into the house, and my son Zion is running around, his high ceilings and everything, after the bird. And he says,
I think it's fair to tell the listeners you live in the aviary at the LA Zoo.
That's right, with butterflies. And so he yells to me, Daddy, look. I look down over the balcony, and he's got the bird, a blue jay, in his hands, and the bird's looking up at him and chirping. And he's rubbing it, and it's like unbelievable. And I give my youngest son's Asher the camera on the phone, take a picture. I lock the dog in the other room, okay? Asher takes the picture, scares the bird flies around. I realize at that moment that I've left the other door open and the outdoor gate and one door open, and I'm up on the balcony and I see my dog just running, charging at full speed around, through in the house, and I'm trying to get down as fast as I can, and he takes that jump like a dog takes on a frisbee, chomp, on the bird. The bird is in the dog's mouth with the head out of the mouth, just chirping, whining. We're all three of us trying to get the bird out. I open the dog's mouth. My son takes the bird out. And the bird's looking at him, chirping, and then the head just goes back and it dies in his arms. And like it was the greatest positive moment that a person could have and the most negative moment a person could have all at one time, which is the rarest of the rare for any human being to experience. I can't even remember when I've experienced that happening back to back. So I'm holding the bird and I say to my son, listen, what do you want me to do, Zion? I'm so sorry. I left the door open by accident. I'm so sorry. Do you want me to bury the bird with you? Do you want me to give the bird to the dog? He said, do whatever you want, Daddy. I said, I'm going to give the bird to the dog. My son goes out by this backyard. He's got his head in his hands. And I'm thinking to myself about the negativity and the positive thing all at once.
You're thinking this as it's unfolding. You're actually having...
as it's unfolding,
okay.
I'm thinking, what,
That's some Buddhist shit, that you're thinking positive and negative, and so balancing it as it's happening.
I go out there, I sit with him, I put my arm around him, I hug him, I say, Zion, again, I'm just so sorry. It's just don't blame the dog because it's meant to hunt, and please, I hope you don't blame me. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. And he says, it's okay, Daddy, but I want you to see something. And he turns around and he looks up on the chimney, and there's one blue jay up on the chimney, chirping, looking around. He says, Daddy, that's probably his wife, or maybe his brother or sister or dad or mother. And they're looking around and they know that everything's going to be okay, and I'll be okay, Daddy. And so I think to myself in that moment how personal things relate to our business. And the fact is that you in your career have had enormous positive moments. But what sometimes happens is you also have those bone-crushing moments that happen